I have been wanting to make a Cupid of some kind for the longest time, and when I was looking through some of my older ornaments that I made, had forgotten about this pattern that I used to use fairly often. And what I like about it, it has the arms attached. You do top stitching after you stuff it, and that's what separates the arms from the body. And I kind of like that hourglass shape. So I made one that also has like a Santa Claus hat in case if I want to use it for Christmas. And I wanted to try to make some small ones, so I copied them at 50% to make pins. So for this video, I'm going to focus on the Cupid, the first one that I showed you. And I traced the shapes onto my fabric and sewed around the edge. And then, as always, you have to cut that out, clipping the corners and the curves. And if you don't know what I mean by that, I have a video, an earlier video that explains exactly what that is. So you can watch that if you don't know what that is. After I cut that out, I have to cut an opening to invert it. I'm going to cut it in the head because that's going to be covered with a hair. So I'm cutting a slit, and then I'm going to use my shish kebab skewers to invert that. And just making sure that I'm pushing out the corners and all of the curves so that I have the shape. I never iron these, but you could actually iron it too to make sure that everything is properly inverted. So I'm using my polyfill stuffing, and that's the only stuffing I use. And I noticed that if I buy it in the smaller quantities, it seems to be a better quality. I'm not sure why that is, but one time I bought a big, huge box of it, like a 10-pound box, and it just wasn't the same quality. So now I just buy the smaller bags. I want to stuff this relatively firmly, but not too firmly so that I can't sew top stitch over those arms. I need to be able to top stitch on those arms. And this is how I do it. You kind of have to wiggle it in to the sewing machine and then do a tiny bit of reverse at the beginning, and then I'm just sewing up to where the armpit would be, and they just look so cute. I had totally forgotten about this pattern, so I was really excited to use it again, and especially to make a Cupid. I've been trying to make a cute Cupid forever, and this year I finally figured out my design. So now I'm closing up the opening. Even though that's going to be covered up, I still like to sew it closed because it shapes the head a little bit better if it's closed. So next I'm painting it, and I'm going to give her short sleeves, and I'm using my tiny little crappy brush. All my brushes are super crappy. Those are the only ones that work for me. I don't know. The cheapest brushes seem to work the best. So I'm just doing the outlining, and then I'm going to go in with my thicker brush. So front and back, I'm putting in with a thin brush the delicate areas. And now I'm using my bigger crappy brush that, believe it or not, I got it at dollar store, which should be called $1.25 store, because everything's $1.25 now or more, which is still a great deal. And I got like 8 brushes in a package, and they actually work great. So that's what I'm using here. And I'm just filling in what I just outlined, and I cannot wait to see how this turns out. Every year I try to make a Cupid, because I love the bow and arrow, but I've never been able to quite, I don't know, to get the design to work well. So I was really happy with its design. Although I will say, for some reason, she also looks a little bit like a pirate to me. I'm not sure why. So I'm finishing up painting, and as usual, I'm using my big fat fingers to blend the paints together. And front and back, I paint it front and back. And then, of course, you have to let it totally dry before you go on to anything else. So there she is, and now I'm going to do her cheeks. So I'm using another one of my crappy brushes from Dollar Store, which works great. I'm mixed up a pink and brushed off most of it, and that makes great cheeks. And I just bought this specially for my Cupid, and I'm going to give her red heart-shaped sunglasses. Isn't that the best? So this is a heart punch. I had to go out and get it because I didn't have one. I love that. So I'm going to have to glue those on. But before I do, I have to draw the glasses, the bridge and the little thingies that go behind the ears. Well, of course, she doesn't have any ears, but we have to pretend. And then I'm going to glue those. Look at, she looks just like a pirate right now with one patch. The Valentine's pirate. So I'm going to glue that on with my favorite glue, which is fabric tack. And I got to put the nose on first, though. Using my micron markers, and then I'm using my tiny little brush to make the lips. Now you have to let that dry before going onto anything else. So fabric tack. Now this fabric tack is perfect, but because it's a little old and it's kind of thick. When you first buy it, it's a little bit thinner, and it really doesn't stay in place as well immediately. It doesn't stay in place immediately, but once it dries, gets a little drier, it's so perfect. So that bottle is a little bit older, and the consistency is perfect. So her glasses are glued on, and I'm gonna glitter her. I'm going to glitter the front and the back, but I'll just show you the front. So this is the glue, and I use Art Glitter Glue because it's the best glue. And then I'm pouring on the glitter, and of course I have to let that totally dry before doing anything else. So I did do the back in the meantime, and so now she's all glittered up. And this is a tiny ball chain that I like to use on the ends of the sleeves and around the neck. For the longest time, I couldn't find that tiniest size ball chain. I used to be able to get it at a, what do you call it, card making store. What do they call that now? Scrapbooking. A scrapbooking store. That was a great store in Hyannis, Massachusetts. And then she closed. And after that, it was really hard to find that really, really tiny ball chain. But lo and behold, I was at Hobby Lobby and they had it, and I bought every single one they had. So I use my fabric tack again, and I'm putting on my ball chain. Now, I use the fabric tack for this instead of the glue gun because it's a little less, what would be the word? Sloppy. This won't be sloppy. The glue gun would be too sloppy because the chain is so delicate, it just wouldn't work too well with a glue gun. So there she is. Now this is how I made this is the little bag for my arrows, and I did this half circle, cut it out of this craft text which is a cross between paper and fabric. And then I sew the side. And then to make the bow, I made a pattern as well. And I traced the pattern. It's a little bigger than my bow, so I'm going to trim it down a little bit. And I traced that shape onto the craft text. Now craft text it's like fabric, but it's like paper too. You can sew it. I love it. It's great for certain things like this. So I'm tracing on the shape, and then I'm just going to fold that in half. And it's a little tricky cutting these out because I like them to be super thin. So, and it's got that hole you have to cut out in the middle. So this is the best way for me to cut it. I cut the top of the bow first, and before I cut the bottom line, I cut that center out. It's much easier to hold it before I cut it out. So now I cut it out, and it's a little bit thicker than I like it. So I'm going to trim it down with my scissors carefully. And the top as well, I'm going to just trim it. And I'm just so excited that I got this bow and arrow to work on my little pirate Cupid. That's what I should call her. I'm not sure why she reminds me of a pirate. She just does. So this is how I made the top of the arrow. The feather part, same thing. I used the craft text. Now I painted that craft text gold, so that's why it's gold color. The actual color of the craft text is kind of like a honey color. So the gold works great on there. So here's my cute little wings. And in another video I showed how I distressed the wings. And here's my little accessories. Now that's fabric covered wire, and I'm gonna glue the top of the arrow to the wire, and then that's gonna go inside my little pouches that I made. I also tied that feather part of the arrow onto the wire because I'm always worried that the glue, it won't hold it as well. So I usually do some kind of double fastener. So I did end up using string, and I tied those feathers onto the wire. And here's my bow, and then I have a sash that I made out of this floral wire that's covered, and that goes around her body, across her body, and then I'm going to attach the bow to that, and the little arrow pouch will go behind her, in between the wings and her. Now I want to attach that bow to that sash, and I am going to tie it on. This is the hair. Now this is like yarn that I got somewhere that I used for trim for my Santa Clauses, and I thought this would make really nice hair for her. I thought about using boa for the hair, but I like the boa hair because it reminds me of the old-fashioned trolls, but I don't think other people like it, so I went with more normal-looking hair. So here I'm just tying the bow onto that sash, and I'm just using a heavy-duty thread for that. And as I said, I could have glued it. I think that this is better because I know this won't come undone, so that's why I didn't want to glue it. So there it is. It's all tied on, and I'm going to attach that. Now the sash will get glued on permanently when I glue the wing on, because the wing will go right over that in the back. She looks so cute. The best part is that little pouch with the arrows. So I put glue inside of the pouch, and I kind of open the pouch up a little bit. Aren't those adorable, my little arrows? They're so cute. I'm so excited that I finally came up with a Cupid that I like. I'm going to try another version too. I'm going to have her be kind of naked but covered up, and this one I made red just for Valentine's Day, but I'm going to try a Cupid that's just got a sash over her private parts. So here's the hair, and that's covering up that little sewing on the head where we stuffed it. And of course you have to let that dry a little bit, or cool a little bit. And here's her little pouch with the arrows in it. I'm gluing that in there. I love that so much. Just love this. And I do want to add a little bit of glitter to the bow, so that's what I'm doing right here. I'm gonna glitter that one, the string part of the bow. And I'll use my gold, antique gold glitter, which is the art glitter. That's the only glitter I use because it's so good. And there she is. Now I want something for her head, some kind of decoration. So I thought about a flower. This is a little crown that I sometimes use on my mermaids, and it's Austrian crystals that are tied with wire to make a little crown. And then this is a trim that I painted gold, and I think I really like how ornate that looks. So I usually use this for my angels, but I'm going to use it for the Cupid. There she is! Pirate Cupid. I love her so much. And she's all done, all ready for Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. Thanks for watching. See you next time.